Good afternoon, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening. Yeah. And before this session, almost like half a dozen people have wished us all the best. Like they said, best of luck, best of luck. I think to follow up after Geet Sethi is obviously a very, very difficult task. So I think, and most people are nodding. So thank you for that. Lack of show of faith in our confidence. So thank you very much. But we'll do our best. What we would be doing is uh, trying to talk about collaboration. Now, what we would be saying is there's nothing new in it. People have been collaborating. Collaborations succeed sometimes they don't. Sometimes they last for a specific period of time, and sometimes they just implode. Like most relationships. So, collaboration is just one such thing. Um, I think it's sometimes there's a too much emphasis on it, and sometimes it looks like it's forced in the ecosystem. Uh, you know, um, at least I have been in the space for 10 years. Like in the last 5 6 years, like three buzzwords: collaboration, systems change, and we are not happy with it. Now we have ecosystem change, right? So collaboration is just one of those things, but we would want to share from our own experiences what we have learned, right? And you might agree with that, you might disagree with that, you might have your own experience with that, and everything is welcome. And at the end, some sort of a framework we have learned on what works. But again, it's not set in stone. Ultimately, it's humans, it's people who make collaborations work, and each person is different. Each person is unique, and kind of codifying everything into a framework or a rule or a code book might not work. But this is just our own experience. So that's the context of today's talk. And known Tarun for a long time. We have collaborated on and off. So just felt that it would be good to have this conversation in a more collaborative context. So we'll start off. Tarun, you want to share something?
Thanks Kuldeep for
Okay.
having me here. Thank you, Nagma. So this is like Kung Fu Panda movie dekha hai sabne? Yeah. This is like Kung Fu Panda after Master Shifu. So we'll do a bit. Um, we thought end of the day. So all of us, there are 100 organizations in the room. Two of us had a fair share of fun with collaboration. So a lot of times, it feels that way. So we thought we'll share some of our feelings of collaborating over the last 10 years in different fashion. Uh, so सबसे पहले Seinfeld, of course, when you have to make fun of yourself. तो कितने लोगों को आपकी collaboration experience में either within organizations or across organizations, have you felt this way? Have you felt that you are the person doing all the work but rarely getting the credit? Just a show of hands. We just want to get a sense. Okay. Okay.
We have a shy audience.
Okay. If you felt like Alice in an office room, I'd like the women in the room to show of hands. How many times have you felt like you know someone who's an Alice? Yeah. I try hard not to be Larry or the pointy head boss. But yeah.
Yeah, so when the first 4 or 5 years, obviously, as an organization, we were looking very inward, right? And then suddenly, we got onto this, like as an organization, onto a like collaboration bandwagon. So from 2017 to 2020, like with this super honeymoon phase, we had about 60 collaborations. We were partnering with every single not-for-profit, and we thought that that's the like everyone is on the same side, and we have this big enemy, and we're going to fight this big enemy, and we all are on the same side, and we have the tools and the techniques and things like this. But after like 3 years of like collaborating with 60 organizations, like we were able to actually just maintain relationships with three, like after almost 3 years, and some of them actually like imploded. Like there were no conversations, funders got involved, teams quit, and things like this. So generally what I observed in my early days, and I was also young, so the exuberance of youth, the hope that things will just work if things are on paper. But while the process started, and when it started off, like it just felt like everything is right. The all the pieces of the movie are here. But when the process started, actually, is when we realized that things can get very very difficult, because collaboration is an action, it's just not a thought, right?
Think just to add to Kuldeep on the previous thinking. So we took about 3 years to discover a model, and so it's similar tha that chalo we won't expand the organization, so let's not scale the organization, and let's scale this intention of scaling the mission. So that's the idea I took to a lot of people, and the intent was very pure. The idea was to open source everything we've learned in how to build the technology, how to work with governments, and how to do end to end of particular entitlement. And we felt that, like, look, all I need to find is, I need to find, like, 19 other people like me. And so basically 19 states make up for 90% of seats we were trying to fill under right to education. तो लगा कि यार 20 लोग तो मिल जाएंगे, एंड पैसा हम रेज कर लेंगे, सब ओपन सोर्स करेंगे, एंड मैजिक विल हैपन. I have two cats at home, so it's very difficult to herd cats. I felt that I could engineer this network, and काफी high-mindedness tha, and but it took a while for me to realize that networks don't form with a carefully crafted plan. And slowly, as we kind of hit the ground, very much like Kuldeep, we had incubated many organizations for about 3 years, and we learned that even our entrepreneurs we worked with very closely said we were less of a facilitator, and more, though the intention was to run it like a partner entrepreneurs network, the way we were experienced were more like a, a, a franchisee model. And so it quickly break down. We also realized that we didn't have the capability to be able to facilitate a network. So yeah, I realized that.
Right. So we'll. This is quite self-explanatory in many ways, but I think the next part of what we would be actually talking about is some of the learnings. Yeah, some of the learnings we have had. So some of the myths which kind of got busted, and what we learned, and like Tarun said, there was a plan, there was a structure. The leadership was bought in. We exactly knew what were the roles. There was mission alignment, there was vision alignment. The goals were broken into smaller pieces. All these things were there, but the operation of a collaboration, right, is way more different and difficult from the plan of collaboration. And it is within this we realize the nuances of what works in a collaboration and what does not. And I'll give a specific example. So this was post COVID, and in the outskirts of Bangalore, we had partnered with another not-for-profit, and the idea of this collaborative was, actually, it was a collaborative. The idea of this collaborative was, how do we activate agency of young people in this region around constitutional values, so that they can actually start taking hyperlocal action in this constituency. Everything was aligned, but when we actually started working, the teams, the operational teams were not able to have a sync. They were not able to talk to each other, because there was a difference of opinion in the way of engaging with people on the ground. So one organization felt that the approach to engaging young people should be more from a rights-based point of view, right? But another group felt that the approach should be more from a demand-based point of view, right? And this led to constant friction on the ground, constant comparison, constant, almost like nitpicking, like which style is better, conversations around attribution, conversation around contribution, and things like that. And this was my first lesson, that even if everything is like set in paper, the human part of it takes a lot of time, for kind of humans to adjust. So we can talk about collaboration, we can have all the frameworks in the world, but the act of, or if you want to truly be collaborative, it's a mindset. And for that to happen, we have to be in the act of collaborating constantly. So that has been one of our specific learnings between the thought and the action of collaboration.
Yeah, no, one quick example, in fact, between Reap Benefit and Interaction. I think it was 4 years ago, just before COVID. On paper, it was the most, fantastic set of pieces coming together. They're really good at civic tech. We're really good at gov tech. They work with young people in active citizenship. We work on the later half of the journey. They work on access to civic amenities, and we work on access to, health and education entitlements. And if you look at multi-dimensional poverty index, तो हमारे दोनों को काम मिला के you kind of solve all the 10 indicators of MPI. And we had a member of parliament who had signed off in their constituency. The district collector signed off. So it was as perfect building blocks coming together. We had shared funders. We were in similar portfolios. So on the noun part of it, we checked almost every box. Obviously, as founders, we were very much in sync. काफी टाइम हमने स्पेंड किया collaborating and understanding each other really well. I think when the process kind of went down to the next level of our teams collaborating with each other, them being able to translate this collaboration to district officials, them being able to translate that collaboration to field officials, things didn't work through. So वो एक example था. So what we learned, at least I definitely learned from the process, was we hadn't invested enough time. तो हमने assume कर लिया कि okay, Kuldeep and Tarun are in sync. We feel like our team members are in sync as well, and the people we had kind of mapped on the ground were in sync as well. But we didn't do enough to constantly stay in sync, and that sync very quickly it fell through because of some governmental factors. Yeah.
I think the second learning we had in certain collaborators was this tension between systems thinkers and systems doers, right? So there is or this tension between top down and bottom up. And in certain type of collaboratives, this was a constant tension we were facing. So in any form of a conversation, there would be one school of thought which would be like, let's understand the system, and then the question by the doers would be, what comprises the system, right? Is the system only government? Is system the people? Is system the markets around it? The system includes civil society organizations, so on and so forth. The second tension was a battle between nuance and instinct, which comes from the field, which sometimes does not get codified, versus like frameworks and thought structures. And while on paper it looks like a very beautiful thing that if you get very diverse organizations together which have complementary strengths, which can feed into each other, just mental models and how we are looking at the world becomes very, very difficult. So we all must have been in multiple collaboratives wherein we have seen that a group of people have a certain idea, and then the doers on the ground within their small group are saying they are not in touch with reality. They don't know what is happening. ऐसे नहीं होता है field पे, right? Or the other way around, wherein a group of people are together and they're saying, they're too lost in the operations. They're too lost in the task of the work, and they are not able to see the big picture. But I think that's where the problem is. A teacher in a class who's teaching, the classroom is the big picture she or he has, right? And that's equally important, and one has to acknowledge that. So this tension, and then to kind of handle this tension, we get an external convener or some project management unit and things like this, and actually it gets even more compounded. The problem is not in the thought. The problem is because we are not doing things together, and therefore the friction arises between my mental model versus your mental model, or my experience versus your experience. And this is a very, very real tension, very, very real tension, wherein people with complementary strengths find it very difficult to come together, or at least we found it very, very difficult to come together. Even if you take technology as one unit, within technology, should you open source it? Should it be closed? Should your APIs be out there in public? Should this be on GitHub? There are a lot of complications. So this was another tension or another myth, kind of. I had assumed that doers and thinkers will come together, but both parties feel that their way of operating is the only way, and there is very limited discussion or very limited doing together.
Yeah. And even if you manage to build that trust, हमने देखा है कि you solve the translation problem. अलग-अलग strength के लोग आए हैं and they're able to communicate with each other, have trust in each other, and translate across domain boundaries and organizational boundaries. काफी बार I think it really boils down to in some way the next point, which is power hierarchies do exist. So हम कहते हैं कि हमारा काम last mile hai, fir middle mile hai, usually departments, line departments, and there's the first mile, which is typically the chief minister's offices or the prime minister's offices. Broadly, three layers of decision making. And of course, as organizations, civil society organizations, kuch organizations, work specifically in some layers, and some organizations try to cut across layers. Uh, uh, at least our experience may we've seen this, even if you're able to get to a point of translation. So at the point of breakdown has been like which work gets valued more, right? Just in financial terms, in time terms, in credit terms. So वो real है, and these are kind of real, I guess, hierarchies that exist. And I think the struggle for us as an organization, in many ways, we think of ourselves as the middle mile organization, which is trying to translate, frontline work, and then, work with departments in the middle mile, but also be able to converse with, organizations, say consulting firms, multilaterals, other international NGOs, जो, senior level पे काम करते हैं, या foundations, and a lot of the times the breakdown, happens when you're not able to convince, our own staff that, why is my labor, valued less? Just in economic terms, why is somebody, I'm not able to see why somebody's, labor is 20x times of my own, research abilities or enumeration abilities. And this is real. Pehle, I didn't know how to process that feeling, or how to name it, how to say it, कैसे negotiate करना है partners के साथ, because obviously, we're uncomfortable talking about budgets, salaries, compensation bands across organizations. But एक point आता है where you need to kind of have that conversation. So in one coalition that we're working on, we haven't got there, but we know that this is the elephant in the room. We're at the early edge of having that conversation, but real hai. Uh, Unfortunately, we are embedded in a certain structure of knowledge, Brahminical society. So kuch intellection काम को obviously gets priced differently. Field work gets priced very differently, and that translates into how people feel, how they feel seen, how they feel that their ideas are heard and translated, and how credit is distributed as well. So yeah, that's definitely been my experience, and that's difficult to then rally a group of people working across these hierarchies towards a shared mission.
Yeah. So these were some of the learnings we had, but obviously it's not all gloom and doom, right? But sometimes, at least for us, where we were in our journeys, it was good to recalibrate. It was good to understand that this is a marathon, and you just can't talk about collaboration and get going. So the next 10 minutes, we would kind of share some examples where it has worked. It's worked for us, and some form of types of collaborations we have seen, and some of you probably can relate to that. Some of you, hopefully, at the end of this, could start seeing your work from that perspective.
We did collaborate with a AI image generator. So that's apparently Kuldeep and I from Neanderthal times. So I'm glad we have ripped bodies. So in many, our ancestors had, I guess, ripped bodies. So clearly we lost some of the muscle. But the main point there was, Harari says this as well. So we had actually Neanderthals who were taller, stronger, had better tools, 20, 30,000 years ago. But our ancestors, Homo sapiens, kind of managed to, win the evolution lottery. And one of the reasons for that was Anybody who's familiar with cooperation? Yeah. As Homo sapiens, of course, language was critical to it. We kind of invented or discovered language or ways to actually scale our ideas. So obviously, imagine two of us in that picture. So we had to say something that we out there in the hunt or gathering food. We were able to figure out how to spread that message faster. So language, and then of course we invented uh, cooperative mechanisms to work in tribes, and then propagate this knowledge. So all to say that it's very much in our DNA. So matlab, 30,000 years we've survived or we've evolved because we know that this is very core to why we've evolved. And even if COVID is any example to go by, if we're all in this room without masks today, it's because of the scientists who managed to kind of open source the code and made sure that the first uh, mRNA variation that was discovered. So it wasn't left to just a private laboratory. So there was enough kind of open source code available to replicate the vaccine formulation.
Yeah, so some of the types of partnerships, which about three or four, wherein we have collaborated with each other and some other organizations. So we'll kind of share those examples with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to lay this out, the core principle we want to leave, अगर इसके बाद कुछ याद नहीं है, you've forgotten kind of all the images as well. So one word we want you to remember at the end of today is interoperability, right? So, and that's the icon. It'll be a buzzword, as we see AI taking over a lot of our lives. So we want to talk about three types of interoperability, which happens in collaborations, which we've experienced in collaborations. And we'll share some examples on what do we mean by interoperability and how does this operate across three different levels. First one is simple data interoperability, and the second one is funding interoperability. Thoda bahut, we've given some examples which illustrate both. And the third one is talent interoperability. So you want to start with one
Yeah, so
example?
we can start off with talent interoperability. So about 4 years back, we are trying to build our tech teams, and if some of you are using tech in your work, you'll realize that tech talent is very expensive. And identifying the tech talent is also extremely difficult. So one of the things we did with Indus Action was we had a common CTO. And that CTO, because the CTO A was very expensive. So when the CTO came on board, we were able to share that resource. But the other thing, what happened with the common CTO was that now we have a common tech team. So we have common coders. And our work is slightly different. Like it's not very similar. We have common product people. We have common testers, so on and so forth. So if like there is a talent crunch, there you don't have too much of choice available. But with the choice we had, we kind of were the first experiment on sharing a CTO, and today you have a program called as fractional CTO. And not only ended there, but the way the CTO kind of designed the tech strategies of both the organizations, it's almost like it can be connected. It's interoperable, so it could be connected. So that was one first experiment we did with talent. And then on building on that, now we're trying to share common fundraising resources. So how can we have a common fundraising person, at least when it comes to certain tasks, like say scouting for more funders, or writing applications and things like this. So this was the first thing we did, and now we're doing it with other organizations as well. In terms of HR, in terms of funding, in terms of tech. So one such learning we have had in just building a collaborative is like people to people. We have also failed at a programmatic level. They have a program called as Samaja, which is they work with citizens on the ground, and we also work with young people on the ground. But at that level, we have not been able to have talent exchange. But at some functions, we have been able to have that kind of a collaboration with talent.
Yeah. On data interoperability, and typically when we think about data interoperability, so usually, in governments, or the typical understanding is that, can databases speak to each other? For example, like, there is pregnant lactating mothers registry that, WCD department has, and, but it doesn't speak to the education department. And many ways these are the same children who graduate and move into the Anganwadi and then become eligible for RT benefits. So that was kind of the first order thinking we had on data interoperable hona chahiye across department databases. But I think one like nuance that is built over the years is, and of course, making data interoperable has its risks as well. So obviously, getting big databases to speak to each other has cybersecurity risks, and to motivate that across organizations also, will require time, confidence, security protocols, and a certain level of API exchanges. But the kind of data interoperability that we've seen really work is, if you abstract the, personally identifiable layer, if you abstract the basic database layer, and uske upar jo insight layer hai, we all spend a lot of time directly interfacing on the ground, and our lived experiences can be, captured, and that is the exchange where a lot of, repetition happens. And हमने देखा है कि, when we work with different community-based organizations across the country, we try and share, where we have learned how difficult some of the last mile transactions are, and sharing data on how do we reduce 10 transactions to say 7 first and 3, and what actually is the code to break that down from 10 to 7 to 3, and what is the kind of data, for example, we have based on this experience something we built called the MES. It's short for most efficient survey, and all of us are trying to discover the least number of questions we can ask on the field through our enumerators with the family, so that we have the most valid information for a match to, say, a set of government programs. So, Kafi organizations, so we are in this work, Hakdarshak is in this work, UNDP has done an eligibility engine as well. We work closely with ID Insight to build this as well. So, Samagra GDI has done a version of this eligibility engine. Government themselves through MyGov have done. So, if you look at it, like all of us are trying to solve the same problem. In many ways, is can I in 15 data fields get to a certain profile of an eligible family, so that I don't need to kind of trouble them more, and I can give them a match of most of the government entitlements or programs. So there is not much to really discover in the science of it. But though the art of it, which is once you know that, okay, these are broadly the 12 to 18 fields across state. So then the brass tacks is really like, state by state, how do I work with a small group of organizations to, exchange data on what are the most valuable, programs around. And that's really the kind of data interoperability we're talking about. It's less data, but like the insights derived from data, once made interoperable, saves a lot of time, saves a lot of energy, and obviously, builds resilience across organizations.
Yeah, and just to build on that, another small example is that there are a lot of grassroots organizations which are collecting a lot of hyperlocal data, in their own communities. And the problem with that data is that that data is not necessarily accurate all the time, but it is very, very directional. It gives you a direction of what is happening in a community. So for a long time, a lot of grassroots organizations had their data, but because they were so busy kind of executing things on the ground, sense making of the data was not happening, and the data was very, very unidimensional. So for example, if somebody is just collecting garbage burning data, but say someone else is collecting asthma data, so these data are sitting on like silos, right? Like one organization has this information, another organization has this information. So one such initiative now as a collaborative we are trying to do is, we are calling it Samaj data, wherein all public data, right, which is crowdsourced either by citizens or civil society organizations, will sit in a common place. It'll be geomapped, it'll be tagged to the location as per your district or maybe your area and things like this. And then as a collaborative, either using AI or even having a small community, get the intersectionality out of this, right? So if you have garbage information, you have air quality information, you have asthma information, etc., the narrative you can build from that is far more stronger and effective than having just one piece of information, right? And when we started this initiative, the value for a lot of not for profits on the ground was that, hey, we have this information, but we don't have a community to kind of clean this information. We don't have a community to kind of make sense of this information and to kind of build a narrative on this with this information. So sometimes we think that big data is the solution to everything, but there's a lot of power in small data, right? And imagine all that data coming in and sitting in a place, and everybody owns that information because it's public data. So we are doing this with a few organizations like INREM, which is working on water quality, Waste Warriors, which working in waste management, Buzz, which is working in rural Karnataka with women, Gram Vani. So we all have a lot of hyperlocal information, but when that information is in our silos, it does not have power. But when it comes together as a collaborative, it's actually helping us build a very, very strong narrative. And I think that's one low hanging fruit a lot of not for profits can actually collaborate with. Like, how do we make sense of our information? And then how do we actually humanize this information? So that's another experiment we are doing with data interoperability. And we are calling this Samaj data because it belongs to society. And this can actually have a lot of knock on benefits at differing levels.
Yeah, the final piece is funding introp, and I think this is the hardest piece of the puzzle. And I shared before that our earlier was us to do the fundraise and us being the anchor organization, the network, and we felt that that led to unintended power over structure. The intention was to do a power network, but it didn't work that way. So a 2.0 attempt was Lego had this big challenge around build a world of play, and as we were trying to, and we work in kind of early childhood development and first 1,000 days, and when we saw kind of the prize, it was a $100 million challenge with the top teams getting 25 $13 million. So पहले तो calculator खोल के फिर we said let's convert this into rupees. फिर we realized that we didn't have the capacity to absorb that kind of capital, and said but I think we have a creative idea on how to do first 1,000 days work. And that's when the 2.0 attempt was, what if right from intention and inception, if we find the right mix of organizations to co-create a project. So that's how Care to Play was born. So we were 5 organizations that came together. 2 of us who work on livelihoods, Indus Action Trickle Up. Broadly, we say we work on providing cash to families, either through entitlements or through the microcredit markets. And then Saja and Rocket Learning working on the care part. They focus on learning once we've ensured that there's a amount of cash which takes care of toxic stress for givers. So we joined 4 of our models together and we said ID Insight will be our embedded partner. So that was an attempt. It's still work in progress. In fact, I just had a long workshop we did all hands on deck today morning, where we're still debating shared metrics. So we're all running our own metrics still. The funds we've managed to operate across 5 organizations, but we're at a place where we're trying to come to a common ground on what's the metric. We all agree that we want to increase high quality engagement time between the caregiver and the child. Usme koi ideological debate nahi hai. We also agree that prior to that we need to increase kind of invest in health and nutrition. We need to increase per capita incomes. Koi debate nahi hai. It all came down annually. I think we have 15 to 20 parent engagement sessions. What's the scope and sequence of this? What is more urgent? What is less urgent? So it boiled down to that brass tacks. So and then of course conversations kind of the music beneath the words was is our labor equally appreciated. Like I said previously, like the ultimate conversation then becomes like are we able to see each other, are we able to value each other's labor equitably, and that's a journey of growth we have to go through. But definitely in my experience it's been the toughest interoperability to crack, because we all have very strong mental models around money, finances, and funds and budgets. Yeah.
So these are in conclusion, these are the three types of partnerships or collaborations we have tried. It's still work in progress, but it's been a journey. It's been a journey from being completely, idealistic and exuberant about it. Now it has a, dash of realism, and also acknowledging and understanding that there are different levels to it. There is no, it's not set in stone. Some might last for a long time, some might just be for a short period of time, like what we saw during COVID, right? But the larger message is that if we really if we really want to be collaborative, we'll have to start acting. We'll have to start showing that in action, and it's a muscle. With time, kind of that muscle will build. So while we have been able to do it with two organizations, we have been able to see that in the last 2 odd years, we are able to create more networks from this learning. So I think, in conclusion, just to encapsulate that, it's an action, it's a verb, and the only way to do it is, get going with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.